You're listening to the Scarecrow Runner Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Gilbert, and I'm excited that you're here to journey alongside me as we lace up the shoes and journey through life, liberty, and all things running each and every week. Now, let's head down the trails and see what's in store in this week's episode. Well, man, let's just jump in and see where it goes.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you for joining me today on the Scarecrow Runner Podcast. Both listening and those that are watching, thank you for joining me today. I have Nick Fiedler. Is it pronounced Fiedler?
Yeah, you got it right, man. You're probably the only person in my life that's got it right in the first time, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So you got to look at how the I and the E are in there, right? It's not Fiedler, it's Fiedler.
You get that.
That's probably the attention to detail. Like we were talking about having all sorts of meetings on a regular basis. It's like, I'm always talking to people and there's nothing worse than butchering someone's name and feeling like a heel. So, I've been able to follow along with Nick and his adventures on Instagram world. And for those of you that want to know more about Nick, you can find him on Nick Goes West. If you search for Nick Goes West on Instagram, you can find him out there. And so one of the things, Nick, that I was curious about, you said you're from the South, but you went West. So when you're talking South, are you talking Texas? Are you talking Arizona, Georgia, Florida?
Well, Texas would call itself something else, so I don't want to align with them not being from Texas, and spent a good bit of time in Atlanta as well. But then at one point moved out to Arizona, so that's when my handle became Nick Goes West, and coincides with when I started running. So that's kind of how that developed.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, Arizona. That's a good training ground for a lot of elite runners. You've got the altitude and you've got the mountains, and you also have the desert if you're in the right areas. So, and I'm gonna probably punch my internet here in a minute because it continues to freeze up on me. And so for those that are listening, if you hear splotches and glitches and pauses, just just blame it on 2020. It's kind of the way things have been going, and we'll just push through this and not let it kill us. So Nick, you're 38 years old, and you've been running for about 8 years now. And I know based off of what you had sent over to me, you gained, basically your metabolism slowed down and you gained a lot of weight and you realized, I'm not what I need to be. And I can relate to that. You balloon up 30 pounds and you're like, crap, I'm fat. And what do I need to do to lose the weight? And I thought it was funny how you said I was too cheap to go to the gym. So I just laced up the shoes and went for a run to go as hard as I can. Why not, right? Running is the best therapy, in my opinion. And I would rather invest in my running than go to a gym. For me, I've gotten more gym equipment since COVID hit, where I have more home gym stuff now. But I hate getting in a car and driving to the gym to work out. I'm like, I want to be able to do it here and now. And when one of my former jobs, we actually had an office gym. It was perfect. I didn't have to go anywhere, right? I could just go there during lunch and be done. I don't want to be inconvenienced to, I know that sounds horrible, but I didn't want to be inconvenienced to go work out whereas like you lace up the shoes and go right out the front door and get a workout in. I'm like, I can do, core work and I can do body weight exercises here at home and I can just go run and we're good. So you were motivated to lose the weight. And then you just go out and you run as fast as you can until you throw up. I mean, that's pretty epic there.
That's exactly it. I mean, first of all, I think that the majority of us all suffer from, like, by the end of the day, decision paralysis. Like, if you have a job where you're making decisions either for yourself or for a team the whole day, or if you have a family and you're like making the decisions for all of your kids, or even if it's just you and your wife and you're making a decision, or you and your partner and you're making a decision all day about where we're going to eat, what we're going to do. When it comes down to like, okay, well, I need to work out. I don't want to sit and like have to look up a workout. I don't want to sit and have to pay a gym. I don't want to have to join a gym. Goodness knows what it's like to try to join a gym. So I was like, what's the easiest thing that I could possibly do? And I had tennis shoes. I didn't even have running shoes. They were like tennis shoes, but I was like, I'll just put these on and I'll run as fast as I can until I can't. And it was about a mile. And so I'd run a mile, I'd throw up, and then I'd walk home. And I did that for almost a year. It was just I just repeated because I didn't know any better. I didn't have a coach. I didn't
Yeah.
train in track. Like I wasn't athletic before I hit 30, and I wouldn't even like now I'm probably athletic, but for the past, from 30 to 35, I wasn't athletic at all. I just did what I thought was like a good exercise, and I thought that running further than a couple miles might hurt my knees. So I just did that every day. But the reason that running took on, not just because I'm cheap, but also because I just want something where I can walk out my front door and do the thing and be done. And
Hmm.
I don't have to think about it at all. And that just took on like, this could be that I can spend an hour, I could spend an hour and a half doing this thing, but everybody's got a loop around their place, whether it's an apartment or a house or
Yeah.
whatever you've got. Everybody's got a loop without having an excuse. And I did know that my metabolism stopped. I had weighed 150 from high school all the way until I was right before 30. And then I got to about 190. So I was like, well, something changed.
Hmm.
And I had never really worked out the whole time, but I was like, I should probably do something to take care of myself now that I'm in my 30s. Now I'm kind of an adult. I should probably like look after myself. And it started, taking hold. And then like races came on after that. But like that was the first thing when it was like, hey, I need to take care of myself. I don't know what to do, but I know that running will make me sweat and get me out of breath. So that's probably where it should start.
And it's not a bad place to start. I mean, honestly, it's better than just, yeah, you could probably do push-ups until you pass out, right? And yeah, that's gonna build up your upper body and your biceps and such. But and you can do, sit-ups and body squats or whatnot. But I was even yesterday, I was talking to my friend earlier, and I was like, one of my favorite places to run here in Tulsa, it's an urban wilderness area. So it's trails, right? And it's a lot of great running area, but I have to make that commitment to drive the 20 plus miles, 20 minutes to get over there, run, and then 20 minutes back. And I'm like, so I make those times special because I'm like, dude, 40 to 45 minutes of driving, I can get 4.5 miles in, and plus what I would run there. And then we're talking I can get 7 and 8 miles worth in versus getting 4 or 5 miles. So I'm like, you start to, yeah, you don't want to have to think to work out. It's like, why spend the extra energy thinking when I can use that extra energy to actually put forth the effort and work out? So I don't want to, make decisions all day long with work and home and kids and wife and what are we going to have for dinner. And then when it comes to time to working out, you know, I don't want to use that extra energy. I want to use that energy to just go out and give my best in a workout. So I don't want to spend extra time thinking about what does my chart say? What do I need to do on the workout today? I mean, it's just like, no, I'm too tired to think about it. I want to lace it up and go.
Yep.
So I totally get that. Totally, that's definitely me to a T. Most of the time I'm running, it's at night because I'm able to unwind, and that's kind of my therapy and my detox. I'm unplugging. I'm just going. I don't have to think about anything, but yet I'm thinking about everything.
Yeah.
I'm clearing my cache, as they would say, getting rid of all the crap from the day and just purging it. And I don't have to worry about anybody or anything. It's just me and the road, and I get my workout in. And, you know, some people, I don't know about you, Nick. Some people prefer to work out in the morning and run in the morning. Some prefer the middle of the day. Some prefer night. I'm horrible at getting up early in the morning, but yet, all my ultra running friends are like, man, if you want to get the work done, you got to get up early in the morning and get the miles in early in the morning. And I'm like, but I can't get my butt out of bed. And they're like, go to bed earlier. And I'm like, but I'm a night owl.
Yeah.
I've done that my whole life. It's like, you're trying to tell me to change who I am and the DNA. Yeah. When I trained for my 100 last year, I forced myself to get out of bed at 5 o'clock and go run those long runs. But this year, my body's tired. And, it's like the whole mental drain. It was actually something I read on the last week talking about how the pandemic has really messed with a lot of people mentally, right? There's this mental drain that is in the subconscious that we're just constantly drained. And because I'm like, why am I so tired all the time? And why am I not able to get out of bed? I'm just blah. And I was like, I can see it. It's just that underlying thing we don't really see, we don't think about, but it's there. We realize it's going on. And I just have no momentum and no desire to get up early. I was like, I'll just keep going late, going afternoon or whatever I need to do, and just knock it out. So for 2 years, you just kind of lace it up and go and do your own thing. And, however Nick goes, he just laces them up and not even running shoes, which is, if you don't know, I mean, you can't blame somebody that wants to go out and do good for themselves. I mean, I've seen people running in, sadly, I've seen kids running in dress shoes before. I'm like, that's got to be killing their feet. But if they don't know, they don't know any better. At least they're doing it, right? At least they're trying. And so you do this for 2 years. What changed for you? I know that your sister wanted to do a triathlon or for the Ironman, and I know some things shifted there. Kind of take us into that. Transferring from the 2 years of you just lacing them up and making yourself puke. What changed for Nick?
Yeah, so that was it was in Atlanta, where I just started running right when I turned 30, and for a couple of years there started running in the humid heat there. Ended up moving out to Arizona, and the whole time, one of the things is I didn't have any friends or in my circle of people that I even knew anybody that worked out, let alone run. So I didn't have anybody to tell me that like you're wearing the wrong shoes, or like, hey, what you're feeling is those are shin splints. So I was like, well, I'm being a wuss, so I just need to get back out there and keep running. When I and I did have some people that were like, well, it's, the standard thing of like, yeah, it's bad for your knees. You're a 30-year-old man now, you're running around all the time, you don't want to put too many miles in. So I had that going on as well. When I came out to Arizona, there was a race called Pat's Run, which is named after Pat Tillman, who went to Arizona State, went into the military, and was killed overseas. And they have
fire.
Yep. And they have a 4.2 mile race. His number was 42. So they have a 4.2 mile race that starts right at the Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe, Arizona. And then it goes around Tempe, and then it ends up inside the stadium. And it's a really cool race. I'd never done a race before, and that I had never run more than 2 miles before. But I got there, and it was cool because there was this story about this guy, the story about his family, and the story about what they're raising money for, and these military families and all of this. And I really got into just the overall feeling of what a race was, because I'd never seen a race before, and I had no idea. Like, I knew people did marathons, people cheered, but I didn't know that it was like an event and people were actually like, I didn't know there was a feeling associated with it.
Right.
But that was the first race that I had, and I loved it. And I ended up in the stadium, and like I said, I was from Alabama, so I was wearing I think Alabama gear while I was running. And all of the Sun Devils players they had the whole Sun Devil team that was there to like just cheer you on when you came in, and their mascot Sparky, who is a Sun Devil. I don't know what a Sun Devil actually is, but he was a devil that had a pitchfork. I don't know. And they all said "Roll Tide" when I came in, which this was like very early on being out here. I wasn't around my family or anything. And I was like, that's really cool that another football team would say "Roll Tide" to you, like the football players would.
Yeah.
Because in the South, I wouldn't
No.
ever say War Eagle to somebody that's an Auburn fan. It's just, so I was like, man, this is a whole community, and I'm really excited about what this could be. So then like races kind of like got me interested. And so from there on, I was like, okay, well, I can do 4.2. So my run should be at least like a 10K, because this was farther than a 5K. So my run should be at least 6 miles, 6.2 miles every time that I run. So I started then running, and this was like 33. So this was 3 years after starting running. I should start running at least 6 miles every other day to like see if I can push myself a little bit more. So that was kind of the next step, where I like took it up one level from just kind of lacing up, and where I also got my first pair of running shoes.
Nice. So you've got that self competition going with yourself, right? And I think that's one of the things that fuels me too is, you know, yeah, you can compete with other people, but it's oftentimes it's competing within yourself. And I know I do it all the time. It's a bad habit, but it's just who I am. It's like I'll go out and I'll run, my normal route. And then I'll go out another time. I'm like, man, I didn't run it as hard today. What's going on? And so it's that constant competition. So you go out and you're running 6.2 miles every other day, um, just to build yourself up. As far as the race goes, I mean, that's a really cool. I mean, I love races, period. But when you can link something like Pat Tillman and the legacy he had and his sacrifice that he gave for his country, um, you link something like that, man, that hooks a lot of people and it hits people in different aspects, right? And so here you are, you never ran a race before, and your first race is something that is deep. I mean, that's got a deep connection there, and you can grab a hold of something that actually has meaning. It's like my first marathon was the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon. Well, before the race started, they had a memorial service at the bombing site, right? So
Mm.
it's like that was deep. There was a connection there. I was like, man, that was really, really sentimental and just that kind of that bonding moment with the race. And it's like, wow, that actually meant something. And not every race does that, most of the time you're running a race, whatever. But you get some of those
Yeah.
like Pat's race or the Oklahoma City Memorial or something that has a meaning behind it. Man, I'll tell you what, those are the ones that you remember, and that helps fuel the motivation to keep going. Um, I don't know. It's just those connections really help inspire a lot of people, and I think especially when it's a charity event or something like that, that really the crowd coming running into a stadium, man. I love stadium finishes. Such a cool feeling because you got
For
the crowd
sure.
roaring, and I mean, yeah, for you coming from Alabama and you hear people in Arizona yell "Roll Tide," you wouldn't catch me yelling "Roll Tide" because it's like, you know, um, Oklahoma fans don't root for Alabama fans, right? So it's like you hear "Roll Tide" is like, oh my gosh, roll back out the other direction, please. Is what they would be feeling. So you start training, 6+ miles for your workouts going forward. Kind of take us through the mental side of what you start thinking, how your body's starting to feel and transition from just lacing it up with tennis shoes to running 6 miles in a real pair of running shoes.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like once I started getting, when I started feeling like my runs, if I said like I'm gonna do 6 miles, and I started feeling that was easy, that I could wake up and do that in the morning, that wasn't a big thing. There was something that clicked that kind of got ignited when I started running. That was like, what's next? What's next? And so then I was like, well, 6 is easy, so I just need to start kind of adding on to that. And I didn't like know, still at the same time, I didn't know that maybe like have different runs throughout the week or whatever. I was just like, well, if 6 is easy, then run 7 miles every other day or 7 miles a day or whatever it was. So I just started doing a good bit of that, but I wanted to know what the next challenge was. So it looked like the next challenge would have been to do a half. And I think 7, 8 miles might have been the most that I had run, but that was kind of around what, like I was like, I can do 7 or 8 miles really easily. So I don't think it would be too hard to add 5 or 6 onto that. At the same time, there was a group that wasn't based out of Phoenix, but had a Phoenix chapter called the November Project, which is a free fitness group that started out of Boston. These two guys that went to school up there decided that they were going to work out in November. They were going to go outside and have a workout group, even though it was freezing cold, and they were going to do it every Wednesday at 6 a.m. And then these independent chapters just started blooming out of everywhere. So Phoenix had one, and I started going there, and there were people of all there were people that were not fit at all that were coming there to work out, and it was mostly kind of running stairs and burpees and then running some more. But I really got into like a fitness crowd there. And again, another theme for me was that this is a free fitness group. And as I said before, I'm cheap. So I was like, great. Well, this is kind
This
of
is
like a
perfect.
gym, but it's like cross training. And then these people were talking about like yeah, half marathons, ultras, trail races, and they started talking about all this other stuff that I had no idea about. And they were like, "Yeah, you should sign up for this. You should sign up for this." So it was through them that I ended up signing up for a half. That was a free half. That was basically just running the canals of Arizona, and it was the first time that I had ever run more than 9 miles in my life. And I got off the path because since it was free, it wasn't like uh, covered too well with where you should go. So I just knew that I wasn't halfway when I got to what I thought was the end of the trail. So I just kept on running. And then eventually, like when I felt like I was halfway, like started running back. But when I did that, that was a whole lot of fun. It ended at a brewery. And so I was like, well, this is great. Like these runners like craft brews too. So like I'm all in with this group. And then that made me think like, okay, well, a half marathon wasn't that hard. So like, what's the next thing I can do? Um, so that's kind of where at that point I decided like, great, I'll just sign up for a marathon because I think that's I was like, I think there are longer runs than that, but I think really a marathon is like the longest run you can do. So I looked for the next marathon I could do, and I had a friend that was working it, and he was like, I'll get you a bib if you want to run it. And I said, great, it's free, I'll do it. Um, and I ended up doing that one less than a year after I'd done my half. And the longest run that I had done before that was probably as I was training. I think I did 16 miles. Didn't really do a lot of great training for it, but was like slowly working my way up. And when I hit that, I was like, well, it feels so good to be accomplished at something that was like most people haven't done
Hmm.
before. And that's really when I got the bug. I mean, it kind of started with Pat Tillman race, but Pat's run, but it like after that first marathon, that was kind of where it like took off a little bit for me.
Yeah, when you start to separate yourself from the normal crowd, right? So, you see these 5Ks and 10Ks, and there's so many people that show up for those. It's like it's almost like a social event, right? You've got, I mean, the 5Ks here are just ridiculous. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's just like one big party. There's so many people there, and it's like everybody's doing it. You got people walking, you got people with their dogs, you got whatever, and it's like, come on, man. Some of this stuff is not what I would call running for me. And it
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, I get a little aggravated when, and it's nothing against walkers. Don't, for those listening, don't get upset. But if you're signing up for a race and you're going to walk it, go in the back, please. Because if you're in a corral in front of me and I'm going for a PR or something and I have a line of walkers in front of me that I have to go around, it's just frustrating. So it's like, let's separate ourselves. Like they say, separate the men from the boys. You got 5Ks and 10Ks. That's great. Though that's for your more novice people. And then when you get to the half marathon, it's a little bit more serious because you got some speed and you got a little bit of distance. And then you bump up to the marathon. And, even though the marathon is more and more people have done them, still just like a 1% of the population is even, I don't even know what the real number is nowadays, but such a small percentage of the population has even done a marathon. So it's like now you've elevated yourself to a new level and you're no longer just considered a novice, but yet I continue to see people that have really no experience that are going out and doing marathons. So it's like, okay, then what's next? It's like, I got to separate myself. It's the competitiveness. I don't want to do something that just some ordinary Joe is going to go out and do because I'm so competitive that I don't want to be just seen as normal or, some just average Joe running down the street. No, I want to do what's next and what's better. So like what you're kind of explaining, you went from nothing to, 1 mile to 4 miles, and you start the progression and you built yourself up. And so you run this free marathon. You accomplish something that, not a lot of people have. How did you feel when you got done? I mean, I'm sure your body hurt somewhat because, you run 26 miles, you're gonna have some discomfort, some pain, but I'm sure the elation and the accomplishment outweighed that.
Yeah, I remember I've still got a picture of the first one of just my legs where I have ice packs taped to both of my knees because my body was not used to that at all and my knees swelled up. But what I felt at the end of it was like, I kind of felt both those things. So as I was having, again, a common theme, I guess, a craft beer after the marathon, I was still watching people come in and I was like, um, watching people come in for an hour and 2 hours. And I was like, wow, like there are a ton of people that just do this. Like, am I, yes, if you hit a marathon, you're in a different set of running than the majority maybe of the world that runs. But then I was like, but I'm still seeing people come in at like
Mm-hmm.
6 hours. And I don't mean to like, if that's your best time, like I don't mean to say anything about
It's an
that. I'm just like,
accomplishment, right? They're
yeah,
out there
it
grinding.
you cross the line, you cross the line. And but then I was like, okay, so what's next? So like what's a harder thing that I could push myself through? And you could go in two ways. You could say, well, do it a lot faster, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like part of my was like, great, well, I do need to get faster at that. But the next thing was like, well, what's the next harder thing that I could do that somebody just hasn't, like that even a smaller percentage of people have accomplished? And that's when I was thinking of, I think I did one more marathon after that just happened to be around Phoenix area. But I started talking to my sister, who is in Atlanta, and I'm in Phoenix still now, but was at Phoenix at the time. And she was a collegiate swimmer that had started running and biking. And she was like, well, I've kind of gotten into triathlons. And I was like, well, do you want to do a marathon together at some point? Because now I've done two. So I figured like I'm a marathon guy, I guess. And she's like, I don't really want to train for a marathon. If she has two kids, she has a full-time job. She's a PhD. She's got a lot going on. She's like, if I'm going to train for anything, it's going to be something bigger than I've ever done, and it's going to be a full Ironman. And she said, and that'll take like 6 to 7 months, and I don't have anybody that wants to do it with me. And we're just texting back and forth. And I said, I'd do it. I didn't know what a full Ironman was, but I knew that I knew it was a triathlon. So I was like, well, it's got a marathon on it. I've already done two of those. So I figure I can get on a bike. That's not too hard. So she said, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm totally. Just send me the details, like what you want to do. And then she found one that was directly in between us that was in Texas in 2016. And she said, do you want to sign up for it? And I said, sure. And we both signed up for it. And then I realized at that time I didn't own a bike. Um, I had regular swim trunks, like nothing, nothing like to really swim in. I didn't have goggles. I had running shoes is all I had. So I just, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I know I can run a marathon. So I just got to figure out how to swim, and I need to figure out a bike. So I remembered that growing up, my dad used to bike. And so I texted him and I was like, hey, Dad, do you still have the bike that you used to ride? And he's like, yeah, it's a great bike. And I said, can I borrow it just for a little while? And he said, sure. Like, I happened to be driving out to Alabama and I picked it up from him. Like one Christmas, I drove out there and picked it up on the way back. The thing that he didn't tell me is that his bike was from the early 90s. And bikes in the early 90s were all made of solid steel so that when you crashed, they wouldn't bend.
Right.
Bikes in 2016 are made out of carbon fibers. When you crash, they bend, but they weigh like nothing. They basically float. So he gave me this bike. I didn't get it for the majority of my training though, because it was in Christmas and this was May, I think, when the race was. So the majority of my bike training was on a stationary bike where I would just load up movies on an iPad, watch 2 or 3 movies, and just bike with resistance on. Swimming, I found a pool in the area and I started swimming there. And my goal was just like not to touch, like I didn't have a coach or anything. I was just like, I'm going to swim back and forth for at least an hour every time I go to swim, and I just won't touch the side. So I'll make sure that I stay above water because I'm not trying open water. So I would just go to the deep end, swim back and forth for an hour, try to go as fast as I could. And that was my biggest concern, like make sure that I don't like disqualify for swimming too long. But that was 6 months. I would do 2-a-day workouts. Usually it was be in the morning swimming and in the evening stationary biking for a few hours. And I did 3 road bikes. The longest one was about 90 miles. And I did 1 open water swim before the Ironman in 2016. So that was kind of what it was, a sister's challenge that I was just like, sure, I can do that. I feel like I can do anything because I've done a marathon now. And that's kind of what got me into that next bit.
So the question I have is, I assume that you finished.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I
Just want to
did.
make sure that,
And for the record, I beat my sister, who is
okay,
a all-American swimmer. She
that,
beat me on swimming and biking, but I made it up on the running.
and I was going to say, if you beat her in swimming, then that would, yeah, that probably wouldn't be a go over very well with her. She should be able to beat you in swimming for sure.
She kicked my butt. Yeah, she
But
flew through the water.
you made up for it in the marathon because
Yep.
she wasn't a runner, right? She was a swimmer and a biker, and you were the runner. And so that's pretty cool though. The fact that, I find myself oftentimes, Nick, it's like you just kind of have that naive, yeah, let's just do it, sure. And you don't really know what you're getting into until then you start to do your research and like, crap, what did I just sign up for? You had just regular swim trunks, you didn't have a bike, and you had no experience in the other two categories, and it's like you got to have all three. And so, but you may do, right, you go and get an old bike from your dad that weighs 30 plus pounds, guarantee it.
Yeah, absolutely.
um
35.
and and you're doing all your training on the stationary bike, which, honestly, it works, right? You're getting your lower body built up. It doesn't matter if you're on the road or not. And then swimming in the pool, yeah, it's a little different than the open water, but still, you're swimming. So you did what you had to do. You adapted to the situation, and the fact is, you finished something that you started that was way beyond probably your in your mind your ability to do it, but yet you were challenged by your sister. So anytime that you're challenged by a sibling or a friend, in my book, it's like game on, let's go. And heck, there's no way I would let my sister challenge me to something and then me not finish it. I would never
Yep.
hear the end of it, right? So you're going to do whatever you have to do to finish, whether you're dragging yourself across the finish line or crawling across. So that's definitely a good accomplishment. That's one I've not done. And I always make the excuse, Nick, it's like, I don't have the time to train for a triathlon, especially a full Ironman, because it's
Yeah.
that's a lot of investment of time. It's like with family and job, it's like, like what you were saying with your sister, PhD and two kids and a full-time job and doing all this. It's a huge investment, and it's a time suck. I mean, training for ultras is bad enough, but you throw in biking and swimming in there with it, and it's like, man, I know what triathletes do with their training hours. I was like, I don't have enough time to do that.
It's good. I mean, I think that's important for anything. Like it has to be about balance. If there are times that I went over the top when I was spending way too much time doing 2 days or something like that, and if you bring a family into that, we don't have kids or anything, but if you do bring that in, like you're also asking to borrow time from your family,
Mhm.
and I want to do a whole lot. I want to keep on pushing myself further and further, and I know that those things are going to take more and more of our time. It's not just my time anymore. And
Yeah.
maybe if I had started in my 20s, like while I was single, like I would be doing all kinds of stuff. But now it's kind of like you're balancing it out, where like, what can you accomplish with the time that you can still allot the time to your family that they deserve, and that like you agreed that, when you created a family with them, that you agreed that you'd be giving to each other. So that's kind of always in the back of my mind, even like on
Yeah.
long run days. Like right now, my wife's going to school full time, and she went back to school, and it's like, great. Well, if I have a really long run and the only days that we have together are Saturday and Sunday, and I spend the full first part of a Saturday on a long run, then I just lost 4 or 5 hours of of the time that we have together for the weekend. So it's tough, and it also kind of has to be an agreement once you start getting into like more of a family relationship, where you have to say like, all right, I know, like she knows that I'm going to have huge goals and I'm going to like go after and do crazy things and going to spend a lot of time doing things, but it's like, all right, so where's the balance for us,
Mhm.
as well as me just not like spending all my time training for something or figuring out what the next big thing is.
Yeah, you definitely have to have a good trade-off, right? It's quid, as they would say in law, quid pro quo, right? This for that. So you sacrifice in one area to gain in another area, and whether it's time with your spouse, time, for me, time with my wife or my kids, they're in sports and soccer, and it's like, soccer, and it would kill me for races in the spring because a lot of races I would want to run and stuff are during the springtime. Well, guess what? Soccer games, and nothing worse than an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock a.m. soccer game. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get a long run in on a Saturday morning because, I can get up at 5. I might get 2 hours worth in. That's not a long run for me. And so it's a trade-off. It's like, life happens. And even in my training, this last month, it's like, we had a birthday, we had fall break, we had, all this stuff coming up. It's like, crap, I'm not going to get the training done that I want to get done. You just learn to adapt, right? You deal with what you can and you trade off. It's like, you know what? I'm not an elite athlete. I never will be an elite athlete. You just do the best that you can with what you have. Just like you didn't have really all the means to train for a triathlon, but you still did it. You found a way to do it. You find a way to get the training in, whether it's, if I have to get up early and put the time in and then get up and do that and then do another run late at night and do a double, so be it. My wife, she makes cookies and all sorts of stuff, and usually she's doing that late at night. Well, I'll go out for a run. So while she's doing something that she's invested in, I'm going to invest in myself, and not really sacrificing a lot of time with us. But like you said, you've got that time with your wife, and if you're eating up a third or even a half of your day of that time that you want to spend with her, that's a sacrifice. It's like, what do you want? Do you want to do this for yourself, or do you want to invest in her because she's sacrificing a lot of her own time with the schooling, and that's an investment. And so then it's like, you got all this juggling that you got to do. You got great goals and ambitions that you want to do for yourself. And I know she respects that, but then you all on the flip side, she's got goals and ambitions to finish school. So then you respect that. And it's like, okay, what do we do here? So yeah, it gets to be a balancing act, and you just got to learn to adjust and adapt. And so, speaking of goals, I know one of the big goals that you have now that you've been working on is you're wanting to BQ, a Boston qualifier. And I know it's kind of crazy because all that's been going on, I know it was just announced this last week, how Boston is going to be most likely next October. And It's like, they just announced, I think the day after that Oklahoma City is going to be in October. And it's like all these spring races, once again, it's getting pushed to at least the fall. And we don't even know then if they'll be able to even have them at that point. So what's kind of your mindset, Nick, on you have more time now to train since it goes from April to October. So that gives you roughly 7-8 more months of training, roughly. Is that right? 8
Yeah.
months.
See, the interesting piece about this is that with Boston, everybody from last year, they
It's
allowed to roll over. So with Boston, they've done a couple things recently. One of them was that they made the times harder to get in, to make so that less people were qualifying, which is completely fine. Like it's a good thing that the majority of the running community is getting stronger and faster. So if you want to make it the most exclusive race, you're going to have to bump it up. I joke about it all the time that I should wait like 3 years before I try to qualify, because then I give myself an extra 10 minutes that I could have to finish out my marathon. But yeah, for me, like getting the qualification is going to be the big thing. Once you get it, you might not get into that race.
You're not even guaranteed.
Yeah. But for me, it's about that time. And that's what I'm training for right now. And it's about having a goal in front of you. So the goal was never really to run the marathon itself. It was just that it was the most exclusive marathon that you could be accepted into or qualify for in the United States. And there isn't another one that I know of that you have to have a faster time to get qualified into.
Yeah. Nothing touches Boston as far as that goes. I mean, you're talking that's elite, right? That is the upper echelon of marathons. That's at least within the United States. Now, if you go global, it's a different story. But yeah, Boston, you can't touch that one.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's my goal, and what I'll do is I'll go for Boston qualifying marathon whenever we can have marathons again, and I will shoot to qualify for that. For me, that's a 7-minute mile roughly. I mean, I could actually do a 7:05 and still qualify, but like 7:05 and qualify for the whole marathon, and that would be dropping about 30 minutes off the last time that I got in one. But since then, I've gotten a coach, and I'm doing a lot more drills than just my standard going out and running, just running whatever I wanted to run for the day. And I've tried to become more disciplined in what I do during my days. What's interesting about having a coach is I actually have more off days than I've given myself before having a coach. So even though the workouts are harder, like I have rest days, which I never really took before because I was just like, I'm just going to go out and run every day. And if I don't feel fast today, then I'll run a little bit slower. But if I feel good, I'll run a little bit faster. So it's been good to have that direction as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you feel. You're very similar to how I was. For the longest time, I didn't have a coach. I was like, I don't want a coach. I don't need a coach. I've got enough training. I know enough about running from my coaches in high school and college, and I don't want to spend the money on it. And then it's like, that's an investment. Do you want to reach these goals? Yeah, I could probably do a pretty good job of doing it myself. But, even for me, 2 DNFs at the 100-mile distance, I was like, I got to do something different, right? You got to flip the script and you got to try something new. And so I got a coach, and, it's a whole different ballgame, right? So like you said, you've now been introduced rest days, and you're like, what is this you speak of? Rest days? I've never heard of such a thing. Rest days? No, we don't have rest days, but, you know, the coaches know that you do need that rest for your body to, you've torn it down and you need to build it back up. So I was gonna ask you, how is the transition? How long have you been with your coach, and how's the transition been from, you've got the physical and the mental aspect, because I know coaches want to help refine and make you more mentally tough as well as physically more athletic. How's that transition been for you?
Um, well, so part of it, like I said earlier, one of the reasons that I took on running is because I could just lace up and run out the door. Now the only difference is that I wake up in the morning, I look at my phone, and my run is the first thing that I see on my phone in the morning. It's programmed into an app. It gets emailed to me, and I still don't have to think at all. It tells me exactly what I have to do, and then I just walk out the door and I do that. So part of having a coach that is, and I was against it forever too. I wasn't running in high school or college, but I was just against having a coach because I'm like, I can look up a plan online,
Mm-hmm.
and you can, but I have everything delivered to me, and then at the end of my workout, I shoot my coach a message and say like, this is how I felt, or hey, I like completely screwed up this last mile. I didn't do it at the speed that I was supposed to. And he then adjusts every single day after based off of what happened there. Like
Yeah.
maybe it was too easy for me. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we need to ratchet this up a little bit. Or maybe it was too hard. And the way the app works for me too, my Garmin, when it uploads, it sends all my information to him. So there's no like lying about it. It's like, this is the workout, or like, hey, here's where he took a break. You can see his heart rate drop right here. Like
Exactly.
he actually paused his Garmin.
Are you using
Yeah.
Training Peaks?
Yeah,
Okay, so
exactly.
that's the same app that I use, and absolutely, I mean, to a T, right? So you've got all of your RSS and RTSS and all of those things, and I was like, what the heck are all? And of course, my coach geeked out on all the numbers, right? And he's looking at all the charts, and he's like, this is where you're built up, and we need to work on this. But yeah, you're right. It's like, you can put in feedback in there. I didn't feel good tonight. How did you feel? I felt like crap. Okay. So he adjusts the training schedule, right? And, there was times even for me, it's like, yeah, this run just sucked and I didn't feel good. And he's like, okay. And he goes out and he just changes the entire week ahead. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, we are adapting and we are changing things up to meet the demands of your body. He's like, obviously you need more rest. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, it's like, it's a whole different dynamic. And it's like, you start to see different things. You try to put your coach mindset. And I'm looking at all these charts. I'm like, what do these mean? And so then it's, you're learning more about your body and what your body needs to do. And like you said, yeah, anybody can go and get a training plan online, right? One of the things that my coach had told me, he's like, yeah, you can do that. You can go and purchase a training plan, but those training plans is a guideline, right? Because those training plans aren't built for who you are as an athlete, and those training plans aren't going to adjust and tweak like I can. And so that's definitely an advantage of having the coach. Is the coach is going to learn who Nick is and what Nick does best and what Nick needs to work on. And yeah, it can be frustrating too, because it's like, yeah, you went too easy, Nick. We're going to ratchet
Yeah.
your neck. Your next workout is going to be even a harder workout for you. So it's like, yeah, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. But yeah, it's definitely a great app. I love using it. And, then looking back on it, right, the historical data I can look at to see how I was feeling and what's going on. So it's
Yeah, I
good
think
stuff.
that's like, again, I think we're both against the idea of it, but it's kind of like if you were suffering from depression, somebody could give you a book about depression, but what would be better, to have a book about depression or to be able to get 20 sessions with somebody that was an expert on this and was listening to why you're specifically going through what you're
Hmm.
going through, and like to give you in-person feedback and to have discussion and back and forth. And I didn't realize that until I was like really into the whole process. But it's definitely different because I have downloaded plans online before and just followed them. Uh, and I haven't gotten faster. I think I told you, but like um, I went through a time after listening to a podcast that I was just going to run a marathon every week, and I did it for 13 weeks straight. I didn't get faster at my marathons because it wasn't like there wasn't a plan to it. It was just another challenge to me. And I was like, great, I'm going to do Monday marathons. And I did them for 13 weeks straight. And that was really cool to accomplish. But aside from running marathons once a week, I assume that I got stronger in some sense, and definitely mentally I got stronger. And the distance of 26 miles like eventually became kind of like, okay, well, I understand what that is, but I wasn't thinking about how I was doing it. So it wasn't making me like, the next time I ran a marathon, it wasn't my PR. The next time I
Hmm.
ran a race, it wasn't a PR. It was just, it was another marathon because I hadn't like really thought about what I was doing beforehand.
Yeah, you're basically just checking the box, right? You're just
Yeah.
you're logging the mileage, you're getting the mileage in, and you got great mileage on your feet, but that's all you're getting, right? And with the coaching, you got the progression, right? It's like I don't know what kind of plan that you have, but it's like I'd have 2 rest days a week, right? I'd have a Monday and a Friday because my long runs were Saturday and Sunday, so I had a rest day before and a rest day after. Then I had a recovery run, and then I had a pretty moderate workout in the middle of the week, and then another recovery run. I was like, what are all these recovery runs? And I got rest days. I was like, he's like, trust me. He's like, you've got to have the recovery runs to let your body recover. And I was like, well, what about rest days? He's like, well, that's just when you're going to rest. And I'm like, I don't get it. He's like, trust the process, right? And so then you've got the different elements to where you've got like lactate threshold and different things, and you're testing your speed for a 30-minute period of time, going as hard as you can. And I'm like, what is that proving? He's like, we've got to establish your heart zone, your heart rate zones, right? Your level, zone 1, zone 2. And I was like, what is all this? And he's like, you'll see, right? So it's like, we want you, like, for 100, he's like, I want you running in zone 1, maybe zone 2 at the highest. And he's like, we got to establish that heart rate zone, and train at certain thresholds so
Mm.
that your body can begin. He's like, your zone 3 is a really like, for me, my zone 3 was really small. And he's like, we need to broaden that. We need to make that a bigger expansion. I was like, well, how? And he's like, we got to run at that particular tempo, at that particular heart rate, to train your heart at that tempo. And I was like, okay, this is way more than what I ever thought I would get into.
Yeah,
Like, because I know so many runners, they don't even train based off of heart rate. And I thought it was
sure.
crazy. But I know from my experiences, it actually made a difference for me in my last race. It's like, because I like you go and you run, and oh, that felt good. It was easy. That 8 miles was an easy run because you were adjusted and adapt to it, right? And if you're training at a certain heart rate and a heart zone, it's like, man, my body felt good. I'm not overexerting myself too much. Where if I'm going out by myself and I'm running zone 4 all the time, you're killing yourself, because it's like your body's just getting beat up constantly. And he's like, dial it back to a zone 1. I'm like, dude, I'm like literally walking. He's like, then walk. Like,
Yeah.
that's not running, that's walking. And so, it's an adjustment for sure, a different philosophy. But I know, it helps having, right, it helps having the accountability. And you've got someone that you can banter back and forth with. Yeah, you're not always going to agree with your coach, he's not always going to agree with you, but you have that dialogue back and forth to find the best thing for you. And you've got to be able to have that back and forth with a coach, because he's got to know what you want to do and you got to know what he wants you to do. And I mean, you're paying him to help you get better. And so it'd be like, look, I'm throwing money at you, I want you to make me better. And he's like, then you need to listen to what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little bit of investment there. I mean, I think that's good. And like, as I said earlier, I'm really cheap, but when you think about it, I'm like, well, this is less than my budget for craft beer every month, and I'm getting more out of it. Those are the kind of things where it's like, okay, well, great. Well, have some skin in the game and listen to somebody that's really good at it. My particular coach, his name's Josh. He's over in the UK, and he's qualifying for their Olympic team. I mean, I'm working with an Olympic athlete for the amount of beer money out of a month, and it's and he's kicking my ass. And most of these coaches are really accomplished people, whoever you go with. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk about Josh, but like, you could throw a stone in Instagram and you're going to find somebody that's like accomplished a whole lot, that really just wants to share that. And they want that to be their profession. They want to be a professional athlete, but they also just want to like tell you how you can do better at your skill set. And I'm all in. Like, asked me 6 months ago and I would be like, that's a waste of money.
yeah,
Ask me now, I'm like, well, I'm getting faster week over week. So I've got nothing bad to say about it. And it's a good investment of my time and my money.
exactly. I mean, if you were not seeing the results that you were wanting, then you'd be like, yeah, we need to make a change, right? And so, and I've seen that, there's been people that I know have been under the same coach. They didn't want to be, they were almost uncoachable. They didn't want to be coached. They kind of had that attitude that
Yep.
we had before. It's like, and you've got to be flexible to work with the coach and they work with you, because if you're not willing to work, they're not going to waste their time, because they want somebody that's, one, moldable and shapeable, because those are the ones that are going to actually get the work done. Why did you contact your coach? Well, because you want to better yourself. You want to get faster and you want to qualify for Boston, right? You want that qualifying time. And what you were doing wasn't quite getting you where you need to be. So you took it to the next level. So now let's see some results. You show me a training plan, and then he's completely annihilating you with your workouts, right? And he's pushing you and you're hitting the wall, and it's completely just destroying you, which, it's like, dude, you're killing me. It's cruel and unusual punishment. And I know coaches, I've
Yep.
coached, it's like, yeah, it's almost like this secret side of him. He's like, he's got this evil Dr. Evil laugh going on in the background. I was like, but he also knows that what's best for you. And, for somebody to coach you, that's, training for an Olympic team. I mean, that's high level, right? And you're looking at the best of the best, right? Anybody that's qualifying for Olympics is worth listening to, because they obviously know what they're talking about, because they've got the mindset and the physical aspect going for them. And they've obviously had some phenomenal coaching. So, it's that whole coaching tree, right? It's like, you listen to him and he's listened to his coach, you're learning something that he learned and you pass it on down. And so, it's like, just, yeah, for the price of beer money, you've got an investment going on, and it's paying off. And so if you don't see that investment, or those results, then it's a whole different ballgame and a whole different discussion. But in the meantime, you're seeing your times. I would assume your times are dropping.
Yep.
So what right now, Nick, what's kind of the as far as your training plan goes, what's kind of your go-to as far as mileage right now?
Yeah. So he's like, mileage per week is around 50 to 60 miles per week that I'm going, with about 2 days off. One long run during the week, and then 2 basically speed type track workouts throughout the week. The way that I'm set up right now, he doesn't really believe in a lot of longer mileage than 18 while you're training, because he's got a whole chart of deteriorating like benefits
Mm-hmm.
that you get if you set those as your long runs, and the more benefits that you would get for doing more track workouts. And as long as you're just used to being on your legs for, you know, 2.5 hours, you're pretty good to hit that 3-hour time, which is what it would be for me
Right.
to qualify. So he's more on strength training, and then making sure that like your body is used to a long run, but not like just stacking up 18, 19, 20, 22s. The last plan that I looked at when I was first training for a marathon and had no idea, 22 was like, it worked its way all the way up to 22 for my long runs. But he doesn't have anything that's further than that out. Yeah, I would say it's about 2 speed workouts a day, a recovery, call it a recovery run, which is about a minute slower than what my regular pace should be in the middle of it, and then a long run that's about at that same speed, and then most like the other runs are what my pace should be. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I've heard, there's a lot of different coaches that have different philosophies, but kind of what he's told you lines up with what I've heard from elite runners like Camille Herron. She's from here in Oklahoma. We're talking world record holder, multiple world records, right? And she is adamant that she doesn't need to do runs over 20 miles, and it's the same philosophy. She's like, you start getting the diminishing returns, right? Your body starts to wear down. She's like, I don't have to do back-to-back 20-mile runs. There's no reason for a 20-mile run in my workout. So I'm like, but yet she's still putting in 100 to 125 miles a week. And it's like, you don't have to do it all in one session, but she's doing multiple workouts a day. So it's like, yeah, it's the name of the game. And it's like what my coach said, time on your feet, right? It's not necessarily the mileage. It's the time that you put on your feet to where your body can be acclimated to that distance. So, for me, long runs, on my long runs, when I was training for my 100, it was, a 3-hour session and a 4-hour session. And I was like, but it wasn't necessarily running, some of it was power hiking or whatever it might be, but it was that time on your feet, because you got to adapt to, as much as the situation is what you're going to be performing. Right. So for a marathon for you for 3 hours, yeah, you need to be able to adjust for at least 2 hours of running, and you shouldn't have to do much more than that. So yeah, the law of diminishing returns. It's like
Yeah.
body starts to wear out. For me, it's about a 12 miles is where my body starts to wear down. And I'm like, I'm good at 12 miles. So, but, so yeah, you got a
Yeah,
little bit of,
when I started with the coach, oh, sorry, I was going to
yeah,
say
go
when I
ahead.
started with him, it was right after June. And June, I was coming out, and I just kind of set a challenge for myself to run 10 miles every day. So I did 10 miles every day for every day of June. And then I took him on, and he was like, okay, well, you're used, and his plan didn't have anything that was over 10 miles in it. And I was like, well, I'm training for a marathon. Why wouldn't there be something? And he said, well, you proved that you could run 10 miles. So like, I don't care that you can run 10 miles. Can you run a fast 5K? I was like, well, I'm probably, I mean, I don't know the last time that I only ran 3 miles, but he was like, no, you need to like, we're going to start with your 5K and we're going to see there. So it's like, it's just good to have somebody that can like readjust your focus when
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you kind of have I mean, me personally, I'm all over the place. I'm like, oh, I want to do this or whatever. So it's just kind of like, whether it's a coach or whether it's you just saying like, no, here's this specific plan that I want to like, here's the specific goal and the specific steps that I want to move down to accomplish them.
Yeah, yeah, you proved that you could run the 10 miles. You've proven
Yeah.
that you could run the marathon distance. He's like, but can you do it fast? Right. Prove to me that you can run the 5K at marathon, or prove to me that you can run a marathon almost at 5K pace. Right. That's kind of the philosophy that he's going for. It's like, okay, you go 5K, Now let's bump it up to 10K. And it's like, really? He's like, because if you're wanting to hit that qualifier, you're going to have to run it at 7-minute pace. Right. And
Yep.
so it's like, and for me, I'm like, a 7-minute pace for a 5K. Yeah. In high school, that was a piece of cake. Now that probably worked me over pretty good. And so, yeah, it's definitely adjustments and tweaks and stuff. And so, how does he feel, real quick? How does he feel about, kind of with the BQ, with Boston kind of up in the air? How's that look as far as, because I mean, most marathon training plans, have a kind of a calendar period of time of so many weeks, right? And so now you've got this extended period of training. How's he taking that with your approach?
Yeah, the way that it should have been set up, or the way that we had planned for it to be set up, was that I was going to do a marathon in December, at the beginning of December. That would be my PR, but would not be a BQ. So he was like, "You're going to do the best marathon you've ever done in December, but you're not going to come out of the gate and try to do a BQ because it'll kill the end of it. But I think we've made enough that you're probably going to do, like, my best time before was about a 3:36. And he's like, I bet you'll do about a 3:15, 3:20. And he said, but if you could do that, then the marathon that would be here in Phoenix afterwards would have been in February. So he said, if you can do a 3:20 in December, then by February it won't be an issue to get to the 3:05 is what I would need to a BQ. The one in December has been canceled. So and the one in February may be canceled. So now it's just kind of like, we're going to stay on that same plan and figure out, potentially there's another race somewhere that I can get to in December. If there's not, then he was like, well, you used to run marathons by yourself around the block.
Lace them up.
So
Nick.
yeah, so it's going to be like, great. You're just going to go ahead and make yourself a loop and have your wife out there giving you water or whatever. So you do that for a little while, and then we'll see about the February one, but that's kind of, we're still on the same plan that we were on before. If that doesn't work out, I mean, that running by yourself is you get so much faster when you're running and there are people around and you're on a race, you're just on a course. So we'll see. I mean, it's changed everybody's runs. Luckily, there's a ton of trail running out there right now. There's a ton of groups that are still doing that. So I anticipate doing some trail runs, which are completely different than the plan that I'm on right now, and will not really line up. But we're gonna adjust, and that's kind of the other good part about having a coach. Like, you still have a goal, and the second that I can get into a race that's BQ, we're gonna go for. But we're gonna keep on the plan like I'm running a marathon at the beginning of December, and then we'll decide how we're gonna gauge that. We kind of do time trials for 5Ks and 10Ks. So probably do some time trials just to see where we feel that we're at. And then hopefully the one in February will be on, or I'm going to have to start looking out of state to see other things, or we're just going to have to go full on trail runs and just do that for the rest of my life.
No problems with those here. That's I know with me, it's like, all these marathons and stuff get canceled. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I do trail runs and ultra runs now, because, the crowds are minimal. I've got a 50-miler coming up this weekend, and, the race is on. So it's like, hey, just to be able to run with a group of people is okay with me. I don't care what distance it is. As long as we can run, man, let's go. Cause
yeah.
I mean, as we both know, large marathons may not happen for a while, and it's just, you got to adapt and adjust, right? And just like training, you adapt and adjust to what you're dealing with, and you just roll with it and see what happens. So, but I wish you the best on that, man, and I'll be keeping tabs on you and seeing how things are progressing when you're posting stuff on Instagram, and see if it even happens, or wait for those posts where you're actually just lacing it up and running around the neighborhood. So I'll be real curious to see how that all transpires. But I know regardless, you'll get it done one way or the other. And, you've got goals set before you, and, you'll go out and achieve those one way or another. But I really appreciate you jumping on with me tonight, Nick. And
yeah, absolutely.
Know a little bit more about you and kind of your background and kind of your goals and ambitions going forward. And I wish you all the best.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You all take care. You've been listening to the Scarecrow Runner Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and that you'll join me next week as we journey down the trail for more adventures. Until then, have a blessed week. This is the Scarecrow Runner signing out.